Hi, I'm the Brewmaster. You know, Magic the Gathering is a card game based on formats. Each format with its own card pool, its own ban list, and its own tier list of which decks are strong and which decks are weak. Today I want to talk about a deck that completely defined a format. The extended format. It doesn't even exist anymore. So much so that this deck caused multiple cards to get banned. And then shortly after, rotated. Never to be seen again. That's right, today we're talking about tricks. And if you know what these two cards do, you know how ridiculous that deck was. If you want to hear more, pull up a chair, have a seat at the table. And whether you're a button mash hack and slash controller bash or a meeple moving mastermind of maps, mats, and minis, if you ruffle at the awful ruffle shuffle scuffle, or if you're a click clack pick attack number ball luck sack, we're all here for the same reason. I'm Jake. Let's talk games. So let's start with a history lesson. What was the tricks deck, and what made it so powerful? Well, I suppose first we need to ask, why was it called the tricks deck? And that's easy. Because rabbits couldn't play it. Yeah, it actually does come from the cereal. A lot of decks were named after cereal back then. I don't have a good explanation for that. It was just kind of a trendy thing that people did. I also really liked the cephalid breakfast deck, kind of an homage to that same period of time. But this particular extended deck used two cards, Illusions of Grandeur and Donate. Now, Illusions of Grandeur was an enchantment, cost 4 mana, had a cumulative upkeep of 2. So what cumulative upkeep does is every turn, you have to pay more mana into it to keep it alive. With cumulative upkeep of 2 on the first turn, you have to pay 2 mana, and then 4 mana, and then 6 mana, and then 8 mana, and then probably it goes away. It's very unlikely you're going to have more mana than that. But its second effect is really what we care about. When it comes to play, you gain 20 life. That's huge. In regular Magic, that means you're doubling your life total. But if this ever goes away, you got to pay it all back. Can't play the cumulative upkeep, someone destroys it, you lose 20 life. Donate allows you to give a permanent you control to an opponent. So let's say you get Illusions into play, you gain 20 life, you've doubled your life total, giving you a bit of a buffer against whatever your opponent's trying to do. You donate that to your opponent, they're on the hook to pay the toll, or they lose 20 life, and the game. The original Tricks deck was blue-black, and the whole point of the deck was to get to those two cards. It used a lot of tutors. You had access to Vampiric Tutor and Demonic Tutor. It had counterspells. Force of Will works really great when you have a bunch of blue cards and you only need a couple. You also had things that drew cards. You were running Brainstorms and a few other things. You had other black cards that generated mana, like Dark Ritual. And you also had Mana Vaults to accelerate you into the combo. The deck could work very, very quickly, and with the life buffer of an additional 20 life every time you played an Illusions of Grandeur, Necropotence got kind of nutty, kind of fast. The deck was a little too strong for extended, and it led to a couple of bannings on Dark Ritual and Necropotence, which changed the way the game had to be approached for this deck. But because the entire combo's in blue, well, you throw out the black, you bring in red, and all of a sudden you have a very different deck that's still very powerful and still kind of dominated extended. So the blue-red version of the deck was also awesome. And that's about the time that I experienced it. I got completely blown out by this deck and didn't have a way to stop it. So I wanted to build this deck for a long time, but by the time I got around to doing it, it had already rotated out of all reasonable formats, and this does not really go fast enough for Legacy or consistently enough to run in any other way. These cards have never been reprinted. And a couple years ago, my friends and I had a $50 casual Magic deck building challenge. And I decided that now was a good opportunity to throw the deck together. If you take a look at the prices right now, playset of each of these is going to put you over that $50 limit on their own. But a few years ago, it got me just underneath the limit. I had about $5 to play with for the rest of the deck, and so that's what I did. I built an incredibly stupid budget version of the deck. There's a lot of new toys to play with and a lot of other cards that you can play that also give the game away. So now, let's take a look at the Tricks deck that I put together. It's no longer $50, it's a little bit more, but It still plays pretty well. It's a lot of fun. So come on over here, have a look. So let's walk through what this deck can do. Obviously, we are starting with a playset of Illusions of Grandeur and a playset of Donates. To back that up, we're going to need some draw power. The variant that we're playing is blue-red. We had very little money to work with, so we're working with a bunch of commons and uncommons. Starting with Brainstorm, this allows us to draw 3 cards and filter whatever we don't want. We have a couple lands in here that allow us to shuffle, and that gives us a way to get rid of some of the cards that we don't want to see again. We're running 3 Izzet Charms. Now this does pretty much everything we want it to do. We can draw cards, we can counter spells, and we can deal a couple damage now and then. Then we have a playset of Mana Leaks. We're in 2 colors, so running blue-blue counter spells can be a little shaky. Usually that 3 mana tax works just fine as a hard counter spell, and can get around most of the stuff that our opponents are trying to do to us. To accelerate mana, we have a playset of Izzet Signets. This is super fun, as it gets us to our breakpoint of 4 mana. Everything we're trying to do starts at 4. Illusions of Grandeur starts at 4, and you might say that Donate only costs 3, but that has to be played second, and we have to have the cumulative upkeep for Illusions of Grandeur, so usually we need to get to 5 on curve. Izzet Signet allows us to accelerate by a turn, allowing us to do this combo on turn 3 and 4. We're not running any Mana Vaults or Dark Rituals or any way to accelerate very quickly, so we can't get there any earlier than that, but that's usually good enough with a couple counter spells and removal to start off the first couple of turns. Because this is a Donate deck, and we want to keep it on theme, we have a few other things that we like to give away. Starting off with a playset of Bronze Bombshells. Now that's a 4/1 for 4, already a pretty solid card, but if we do give it to our opponent, it pops and deals 7 damage to them. Rust Elemental is a 4/4 for 4, and it flies. Rust Elemental can eat our Izzet Signets and whatever else we might happen to have in play, but if we give it to an opponent with no artifacts, it taps and deals 4 damage to them. So they start bleeding out because they can't do anything about the creature we gave to them. Finally, we have a couple Steel Golems. This has a drawback of not allowing us to play any additional creature spells. We don't really care, our combo's not a creature spell, most of the cards we're playing aren't creature spells, and if we can give this to our opponent, well now they can't play creature spells. We need a few more cards to give away because right now we only have 4 Donates, so we're running a couple Bazaar Traders to give away our artifacts, and a playset of Spawn Brokers to give away our creatures. Spawn Brokers is nice because all of our creatures have drawbacks and fairly high attacks, so we can start nabbing things that our opponent has without drawbacks that are at 3 or 4 power. Finally, we have a couple lands. We have a playset of Grixis Panoramas. This allows us to shuffle our library, and that's it. The card is bad. There's a million things that you should probably replace it with. At the time, these were a convenient way to shuffle the deck after playing a Brainstorm, but otherwise, these cards don't need to be there, and there's a million better options. I'm running these over things like Terramorphic Expanse because it puts the lands into play tapped and doesn't tap for mana on its own, and sometimes hitting that curve is more important than playing good cards. For colors, we're running 6 mountains. Our Grixis Panoramas allows us to get there pretty easily, and also Izzet Signet can tap for red, so we don't need too much. Also, our combo is fully in blue, so we're going to load up the rest of our deck with islands, and we have a handful of those, whatever fills out the rest of the space. That's the entire deck. It's a quick little combo deck, really, really budget, and there's a million different ways to build it, but this has a couple other Donate cards in it that kind of get there as well and keep it themed. With the new cards like Harmless Offering, you might have other things that you can slot in that would work really, really well in the deck. I encourage you to give it a shot. It's a little expensive, I know, with the main combo, but just anything that allows you to let your opponent experience playing with some of your cards is always a good time.